Now, if you want to do more with the potential of the creative industries, these are traditional standard economic instruments, policy instruments to do something about this. So what we've done in the investigation, for instance, is that stimulating innovation. So we looked at the role of the creative industries as a laboratory, for instance, for other activities. Topics that came up in our research was the role of design as a strategic tool to make companies more competitive, for instance. A strong attention of gaming, and one of the examples in our research is Korea, where they have a very strong organization that is actually promoting the gaming industry heavily. Also very interesting in that field is that many policymakers now seek for strategic partnerships within innovation, trying to bring together different stakeholders. I think this is a very fruitful way to do this, and I like to mention the example of Nesta Connect within the UK. Another example, what I like as well, is the Impulse program for Kreativwirtschaft in Austria. Again, bringing together different stakeholders. If you look at the promotion of entrepreneurship as a policy tool to stimulate the creative industries, one or two things I'd like to mention from our study is that we see a tendency that the creative industries are being incorporated within standard entrepreneurship promotion policies. One example in Germany, in North Rhine-Westphalia, is the Go network. It's just a network for starting up your company, but it also has a special branch, a special additional program for creative entrepreneurs. Because the idea is that they need probably a little bit more help or a more tailor-made approach to starting their own business. On the issue of venture capital, there are also several examples in our investigation. It's clearly from the investigation, but also the policymakers see this, is that it's not so much the funding in itself that is the main problem, it's the access to funding. We find that, for instance, in Singapore, it's, some companies are now starting to apply for general technology or startup funds. So funding not necessarily tailor-made for the creative industries. I think this is crucial if you want to develop the sector further. We also looked at market development. Market development actually implies the developing of the home market, but especially export promotion and helping your creative entrepreneurs to develop markets abroad. Either through trade councils like in Sweden or the UK. But I'd like to mention, as an example, is the cultural export promotion program in Finland. I think, again, this is a strategic tool to strengthen the creative industries in the various countries. If I talk about the fifth point, clustering, I mean, we all know that, and I'm also an urban economist, is that clustering is very much a local issue. In my view, policies are first and foremost local, but there is more attention from national authorities to help and stimulate the development of those clusters. Property rights are important as well. It's an important condition. I like to mention the Creative Commons approach in the Netherlands as a new way of going about the property rights. And there are many other fiscal measures that we've studied, but maybe we can discuss it later over lunch or further down the sessions. What is important, that there are some general trends within those policies. If you look at the 18 countries that we've studied, you see an increased awareness of those of the economic potentials of the creative industries. One proof is the growing number of mapping documents, where actually governments are inquiring the economic potential of those industries. We have to be honest, like I said in the beginning, that the majority of policies stimulating the economic development of creative industries originate from and are funded by cultural sectors. So if you look at the policies, even if the objective is very much an economic one, the institutions and the funding behind it comes from the cultural field. So I think there is a lot of missionary work to be done as well to persuade economic policymakers. There is an issue, of course, should you have a special policy for creative industries? So should you have a generic scheme, or should you have special schemes for film or other subcategories of this industry? There is an emerging trend, I have to say emerging, that some countries are working on a comprehensive national strategy for the creative industries. We see that delivery of those policies is done through arm's length organizations. I think it's also an interesting phenomenon because it shows you that it's something that's still developing, so they have to find new structures to deal with the issue of the creative industries. The role of national government vis-à-vis the lower levels of government, so what should be doing on what level. I'll conclude my presentation with that, but it's a big issue in those policies. The most popular ones for the creative industries are innovation, entrepreneurship, and market development. And you see across those policies this tendency of partnership, not just with innovation, where you bring different birds of together, but you actually find this in other policy areas as well. Now, what are the challenges for policymakers at the local level, the national level, and the European level, if you want to make more use of the potential of the creative industries? I think, and one of the most important recommendations is that you actually have to make a change of attitude among economic and cultural policymakers. Generally speaking, I gave the example of my own faculty, but if you look at the policies and if you would discuss this with policymakers, there is a big divide still between economic and cultural policymakers. And once you not bridge that gap between these two groups, I think it will be very difficult to use the full potential of the creative industries. Also, we need to be honest about sometimes that there might be conflicts and sometimes there might be synergies if you combine economic and cultural objectives. Nothing wrong about that, but need to be open about this. Very important as far as I'm concerned, and it's a recommendation I also took from the report from Kia, is what they call intelligent gathering, and it's also to be found in the communication of the Commission, getting much more solid information and data about the creative industries. We should also, if I go back to our investigation, we selected a number of countries, 18 to 19 countries, where we thought that the creative industries were on the agenda. But only within the European Union, we can also mention a number of countries where this sector or where the creative industries are not on the agenda at all. I think there still is a big issue of raising the awareness of the economic potential. And there's also a role or an issue of stimulating more inventive economic policies. What we see in the general categories of policies that we have defined within our study is a struggle to fit in the creative industries. Can they also apply according to the same standards for funding? Do they need tailor-made approaches? I think there's a long road ahead of us to develop that much stronger. And one way to do that is to intensify the exchange of experiences across Europe. And in fact, of all the issues, also the ones on the previous slide, I think that the EU can play an important role, also in changing the perceptions of policymakers. But one thing I want to conclude with that is I'm linking to the comments of the rapporteur, is that innovation is key to the European competitiveness. And the Lisbon agenda is very important. And I would say, if I look at the information that we've collected, that you should fully integrate the creative industries within the Lisbon agenda. And I didn't put it on the slide, but actually there is some talk about it. It's important. They have added it to some of the declarations. But there's an expression, put your money where your mouth is. And I think this is very valid in terms of the creative industries. Because if you look at how policymakers, especially economists, see innovation, it's basically technology-driven. And I think there's also another side of innovation, creativity, a good idea, new insights that are not necessarily technological, but are also very important for economic development and therefore very important for competitiveness of the EU in the near future. Thank you for the attention.